How did one green machine change the way ranchers feed thousands of cattle? How did a frontier blacksmith's invention turn into the backbone of America's biggest spreads? And how did John Deere become as common on a working ranch as a good saddle horse? From breaking prairie sod to baling winter hay, this is the story of how John Deere helped shape the cowboy's world, and why ranching would never be the same without it. In the 1830s, John Deere was a Vermont blacksmith who moved west and saw pioneer farmers struggling with sticky Midwestern soil. In 1837, he forged a revolutionary solution, a polished, self-scouring steel plow made from a saw blade. Unlike cast iron plows that dirt clung to, Deere's steel plow cut prairie sod cleanly and shed the soil, dramatically easing the toil of plowing. This breakthrough plow that broke the plains opened millions of acres of tough prairie for cultivation and settlement, aiding the migration of farmers, and eventually ranchers, into the Great Plains. John Deere's tiny shop in Grand Detour, Illinois, began turning out these green and yellow plows ahead of orders, an early example of manufacturing at scale. Word spread quickly as farmers saw they could till more land with less effort, laying the groundwork for America's vast farms and future ranches. By the 1840s, Deere was producing hundreds of plows a year. He built a water-powered factory and in 1848 moved operations to Moline, Illinois on the Mississippi River for better transport. Production soared to over 200 plows per month by 1849. As the frontier advanced, so did Deere's business. He partnered with his son Charles Deere in the 1850s and expanded into other farm tools like wagons, planters, and cultivators. An economic panic in 1857 hit the company hard, a major challenge that nearly caused bankruptcy. Yet the family reorganized the firm, with John's son and son-in-law taking leadership, and pulled through the downturn. This early crisis taught Deere Company resilience. John Deere himself continued as president until retiring in 1886. He died that same year, but by then the foundation was laid for an agricultural empire. Through the late 19th century, Deere's green plows became a common sight on homestead farms and the fringes of cattle country. Ranching and farming were often neighbors on the frontier. Many ranches maintained hayfields or gardens, and John Deere's equipment was there to help. The company's focus remained on plows. By 1882, the Moline Plow Works was the largest plow factory in the world. Deere's riding sulky plows, like the famous Gilpin plow, introduced in 1875, let a farmer, or cowboy-turned-farmer, ride instead of walk behind a plow team, saving labor. By the late 1870s, Deere's factory was turning out 180 different plow designs to tackle every soil and region, from 9-inch garden plows to 16-plus-inch breaker plows for tough prairie. This variety meant whether you were breaking virgin sod for a cornfield or plowing a pasture to plant hay, Deere likely made a tool for the job. While cowboys on open ranges primarily relied on horses for daily work, the encroachment of farms, made possible by Deere's plows, began changing ranching. Barbed wire, invented in 1874, started fencing the West, and ranchers had to adapt from open grazing to managing contained pastures. Many began growing feed crops like hay for winter, especially after brutal blizzards, like the winter of 1886 to 87, taught them the cost of relying solely on open-range forage. Here, John Deere's expanding implement line entered ranch life. By the 1880s to 90s, Deere wasn't just making plows. The company, often via partnerships, was selling hay mowers, rakes, and even early baling presses. For example, inventor Joseph Dane developed popular hay equipment, stackers and sweep rakes, in the 1880s. Dane's horse-powered hay stacker could hoist huge hay piles using steel cables, a boon to ranchers putting up loose hay for cattle. John Deere took notice. By 1900, Deere's branch houses were already selling Dane's hay tools across cattle country. In 1910, Deere Company acquired Dane Manufacturing, instantly adding mowers, hay loaders, and hay presses to the green lineup. This was a pivotal step in linking John Deere to ranching. Now the company offered everything needed to cut, rake, and press hay, not just plow fields. Ranchers, large and small, could look to one brand for the gear to grow feed for their herds. By the early 20th century, a new revolution was on the horizon: the tractor. For decades, farming and ranching ran on real horsepower, literal horses and mules. Cowboys and farmers hitched teams to plows, wagons, and mowers. A large ranch might have a whole remuda of draft horses for plowing hay fields or hauling water. But combustion engines promised horsepower of a different kind. John Deere recognized the shift. In 1918, under President William Butterworth, the company made a bold move and purchased the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company, maker of the popular Waterloo Boy tractor. Virtually overnight, Deere was in the tractor business, selling the two-cylinder Waterloo Boy to farmers and ranchers eager to mechanize. In those days, John Deere was actually playing catch-up. Early gasoline tractors were already on the market from others like International Harvester and Henry Ford. In fact, Ford's low-cost Fordson tractor briefly dominated in the 1920s, accounting for 75% of tractors sold in 1923. But Deere was determined to compete, and the Waterloo Boy gave them a foothold. In 1923, John Deere introduced its first tractor designed entirely in-house, the Model D. This rugged, kerosene-burning tractor was rated about 15 to 27 horsepower, cost roughly $1,000, and was built to last. The Model D would stay in production for 30 years, 1923 to 1953, becoming a favorite of farmers and even some progressive ranchers. By hitching a Model D to a plow or hay mower, one tractor could do the work of several horses and men. The 1920s saw a tractor boom. In 1916, only about 20,000 tractors were in use, but by 1935, over 1 million were working American fields. Ranches began to adopt them too. Instead of hitching 6 draft horses to pull a hay mower all day, a rancher could fire up a John Deere and cut more acres in less time. Tractors also hauled wagons of fence posts, powered stationary feed grinders and water pumps via belt drives, and generally took on the heavy drudgery. Still, change came gradually. Many old-timers loved their horses. Some ranch families were reluctant to trade a good team for a noisy gasoline contraption. Early tractors were crude: steel wheels, no cabs, hard to start, and could be finicky in the field. There's a tale of one farmer who let his son buy a tractor in 1937, but after one bumpy ride, grumbled that horses were easier. They knew when to stop at Rose End without being told. But as tractors became more reliable, they won folks over. By the 1930s, John Deere's two-cylinder Johnny Popper tractors, like the Models A and B introduced mid-30s, were puttering around farms nationwide, including many ranches that now farmed hay or grain to support cattle operations. The mechanization of ranching had truly begun. A cowboy might spend his morning horseback checking the herd, then afternoon on a John Deere tractor, plowing a field or running a pump.
One of the biggest impacts John Deere had on ranching was in making cattle feeding easier and more efficient. In the 1800s, putting up hay for winter was brutally labor-intensive. Cowboys cut prairie grass with scythes or horse-drawn sickle mowers, raked it into piles by hand, and muscled it into haystacks or lofts. Come winter, they pitched that hay out by hand to feed cattle. It often took an entire crew of ranch hands, or neighbors in a work bee, to harvest and distribute enough hay to keep a large herd alive until spring. Mechanization changed all that, and John Deere was at the forefront of haying equipment by the 20th century. Early on, loose hay stacking saw improvements. Joseph Dane's 1890 sweep rakes and stackers, later sold by Deere, let 1 or 2 men and a horse pile hay 20 feet high. But the invention that truly transformed cattle feeding was the hay baler. Small, rectangular hay bales, easily stored, transported, and fed, were a game changer. John Deere developed its first stationary hay press, or baler, in the 1910s and 1920s, which could be driven out to the field and powered by a tractor belt. However, these early balers often required hand tying. Workers stood at the machine, poking in wires and twisting them to tie each bale. It was still a tough job. A major milestone came just after World War II. In 1946, John Deere introduced the 116W, the world's first fully automatic wire-tying baler. For the first time, a baler could pick up windrows of hay and tie bales with wire on its own, no manual knotting needed. The 116W produced mid-size 16 by 18-inch bales, but early adopters hit some snags. In fact, that first year's production of 116W balers had knotter troubles and was recalled for fixes over the winter of '46. Deere ironed out the kinks, and balers were back in the fields, spinning out neat bales. By the 1950s, John Deere perfected the small square baler. The Model 14T baler, launched in 1955, could automatically tie bales with twine, safer and easier to handle than wire, and even kick the finished bales onto a trailing wagon. This one machine eliminated at least half the labor previously needed to gather and stack hay. A job that once took a crew of 4 or 6, a tractor driver, 2 on the baler, a couple stacking on the wagon, could now be done by maybe 2 people, or even 1 if using a bale loader. Ranchers could finally put up enough hay for large herds without hiring an army of seasonal hands. With ample baled hay, cattle operations grew in size and productivity. Mechanized hay equipment didn't stop there. John Deere kept innovating to feed the herd. In the 1960s, they introduced self-propelled windrowers, basically a mower on wheels with an engine, to cut hay faster, and mower conditioners that crimp hay for quicker drying. They also developed giant forage choppers to cut and chop corn or sorghum into silage for feed. By 1961, Deere's Automole Works, formerly Dane's factory, was producing 21 different models of hay and forage equipment, from flail mowers to hopper blowers for silos. Every step of making feed for cattle was becoming more mechanized. Perhaps the biggest leap for ranchers came in the 1970s, round balers. These made large cylindrical bales that one tractor could roll, bale, and drop in the field. John Deere was quick to adopt round balers after their invention. Deere's first models came in the late 70s. A single person on a tractor could now create half-ton rolls of hay that eliminated most manual labor. You'd simply spear the round bale with a tractor loader and drive it out to the pasture for feeding. No more tossing countless small bales by hand. Once big round balers and other machines arrived, old customs were pushed out. Neighbors no longer had to rally to help each other put up hay, and extra hands were no longer needed. Mechanization had made ranchers more self-sufficient. Feeding cattle thus evolved from a purely manual, muscle-driven chore to a largely mechanized process over a few decades. John Deere deserves credit for many of those advancements. By providing ever more efficient mowers, rakes, balers, and wagons, John Deere helped ranchers feed the herd in a fraction of the time. Modern cow-calf operations in feedlots simply wouldn't be feasible at their massive scale without reliable machinery to grow, harvest, and distribute feed.
Ranching isn't just about feeding animals, it's about managing land. As ranches modernized, John Deere machines became crucial tools for pasture maintenance, water supply, and fencing, all vital in cowboy country. Consider land clearing. Many western ranches battle invasive brush, mesquite, cedar, sage, that can overtake grazing land. In the old days, cowboys might hack brush by hand or set controlled fires. Today, they often fire up a John Deere dozer or tractor with a brush cutter. Deere began producing construction and land clearing equipment by the mid-20th century, e.g. small bulldozers and crawler tractors in the 1940s to 50s, giving ranchers new muscle to tame the land. A sturdy John Deere bulldozer can knock down mesquite and scrub that 100 cowboys with axes couldn't easily clear. Ranchers also used tractor-pulled rotary cutters, brush hogs, to mow rough pastures and keep weeds at bay. John Deere makes heavy-duty rotary cutter attachments capable of slicing through saplings up to 10 inches thick. By reclaiming overgrown range with machines, ranchers greatly expanded grazable acreage for their cattle. Another frontier challenge is water. Cattle need reliable water in big pastures. Traditionally, windmills and spring-fed tanks were the solutions, but they were limited. Mechanization changed that too. Tractors allowed ranchers to dig ponds and reservoirs to catch rainwater. A John Deere loader or scraper could excavate a stock pond in days, something that would take weeks with mule teams. Later on, John Deere backhoes and trenchers helped install miles of water pipelines to remote troughs. Even today, a common ranch chore is using a tractor to haul a water tank trailer to fill far-flung stock tanks during droughts. The green paint is often on those tractors, underscoring Deere's presence in every aspect of ranch infrastructure. And then there's fencing, the bane and backbone of ranching since barbed wire arrived. Stretching miles of wire and setting thousands of posts by hand is grueling. The late 1800s saw inventions like the Vaughan post auger, a handheld twist auger that helped early fence builders drill holes. But the true relief came with tractors. By the mid-1900s, ranchers could mount PTO-driven post hole diggers on their tractors' three-point hitches. A John Deere tractor with an auger attachment can drill a perfect fence post hole in minutes, a job that might take a worker with a manual digger an hour in rocky soil. One rancher with a tractor can fence off a new 40-acre pasture in a weekend, whereas it took a fencing crew weeks before. This means faster enclosure of land, better rotational grazing management, and ultimately, healthier pastures.
It's no exaggeration that John Deere augers helped build the West by speeding up fence construction. John Deere equipment also maintains the infrastructure of a ranch. Need to grade a ranch road or clean out a barn? A John Deere skid steer loader or a tractor with a blade is the go-to tool. Need to lift and stack heavy oil field pipe for corrals? A John Deere front-end loader can do in minutes what a whole crew with block and tackle did in the past. Even daily tasks like removing manure from feedlots or spreading it on fields. Deere sold manure spreaders as far back as the 1870s are made easier with reliable machinery. Finally, as ranches have entered the high-tech age, John Deere hasn't been left behind. Modern large ranches use GPS-guided John Deere tractors to precisely seed improved pasture grasses or apply fertilizer only where needed. Drones and sensors aside, many ranches find a basic utility vehicle indispensable, and John Deere's Gator has become that ranch workhorse on wheels. Gator UTVs now zip cowboys around pastures to check cattle and fence lines, often sporting the same green and yellow. In short, from the soil underfoot to the fence at the property line, there's probably some Deere equipment involved in building and maintaining it on a working ranch. It's one thing to talk about machines in general, but the bond between ranchers and their John Deere equipment is often personal. Over generations, many ranch families have come to swear by their Deere. There are real-life cowboys who treat a trusty John Deere tractor almost like a favorite horse, dependable, powerful, and part of the family. The brand loyalty John Deere earned through decades of support, especially during tough times, runs deep in rural America. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, for example, Deere & Company made an extraordinary decision. It refused to repossess farm equipment from struggling families who couldn't pay, remembering its own humble beginnings and farmers' livelihood needs. Deere extended loans and let folks keep their tractors, even at company loss, rather than leave a farm family without means to work. Stories of this compassion were passed down like folklore, forging fierce loyalty to the brand. As one historian noted, Deere's gesture endeared the giant to its customers. Many a farmer and rancher told their kids how Deere stuck by them in hard times. Those kids grew up to buy John Deere tractors of their own. It's hard to overstate just how dramatically John Deere's innovations changed ranching and farming. A little imagination exercise brings it home. Picture a ranch in 1880 versus the same ranch in 1980. In 1880, a crew of sweaty cowboys is out in a field with horse-drawn mowers and hand rakes, cutting hay while others drive a herd of cattle to a new range. Come winter, they'll be on horseback breaking ice on the pond so cattle can drink, and using pitchforks to toss loose hay from a stack. Every fence post on that ranch was dug by hand and tamped in place with muscle. The speed of work is the speed of a horse. Now look at 1980. The great-grandsons of those cowboys roar through the pasture in 4x4 tractors with heated cabs, cutting a swath of hay 14 feet wide with a self-propelled swather. They'll bale it with an automatic baler, then load 1-ton bales on a truck with a hydraulic loader. To fix fences, they'll drill new post holes with a PTO auger in minutes. To water the herd, perhaps there's a diesel pump feeding water troughs, installed with a Deere backhoe. The work that took days is now done in hours. 1 or 2 men can manage a spread that previously required 10. This is the before John Deere, after John Deere reality on America's ranches and farms. Mechanization multiplied what a rancher could do, and John Deere was a driving force behind that mechanization on the American frontier. Importantly, John Deere did not just sell machines. It evolved with the times to meet new challenges. By the mid-20th century, as tractors became ubiquitous, Deere faced a challenge of its own. Its iconic 2-cylinder tractors were becoming outdated. By the late 1950s, John Deere's market share was slipping because competitors offered more powerful modern designs. So in 1960, Deere took a bold leap with the new generation of power, introducing an entirely new lineup of 4- and 6-cylinder tractors, the 1010, 2010, 3010, 4010, that were unlike anything Deere had built before. The flagship John Deere 4010 came with 80-plus horsepower, more comfort, and advanced features, instantly launching Deere back to the forefront. Farmers and ranchers responded. The 4010 and its successor 4020 became legendary, helping propel Deere from 23% of the tractor market in 1959 to 34% by 1964. This made Deere the top farm equipment maker in the country once again. It shows how Deere overcame a mid-century slump by innovating, to the benefit of ranchers who now had some of the best tractors in the world at their disposal. Another major test came in the 1980s, during the farm crisis. Sky-high interest rates and low commodity prices hit agriculture hard. Thousands of farmers went bankrupt, and equipment sales plummeted. Even mighty John Deere was not immune. The company had to lay off workers by the thousands. Waterloo, Iowa, home of Deere tractors, lost 14% of its population in the early 80s due to layoffs. Competitors faltered or fell, yet John Deere survived and emerged still strong. How? Industry observers credit Deere's prudent management and loyalty to customers. The company had saved cash during the good 1970s, invested in efficiency, and diversified into things like construction equipment and finance to cushion the blow. Critically, Deere did not turn its back on customers and dealers during the crisis. They offered incentives so farmers could keep buying or upgrading equipment despite the tough times, and gave dealers support to hang on. This strategy maintained the goodwill and brand loyalty that had been built over generations. Many farmers and ranchers stuck with John Deere through the 1980s, just as John Deere stuck with them, a mutual loyalty that carried both through the storm. By the 1990s, as agriculture recovered, Deere was perfectly poised with new technology and products, ready to lead again. Today, John Deere is a global leader in agriculture, but it never forgets its roots in that 1837 plow that started it all. The company's slogan, "I will never put my name on a product
that does not have in it the best that is in me," attributed to John Deere himself, still echoes in its ethos. On ranches across America you see the result. Machines that are built to last and to serve the people who feed the world. From the first steel plow that let pioneers turn prairie sod, to the latest GPS-guided tractor that helps a rancher seed a field precisely, John Deere evolved alongside American ranching and farming, step for step. It turned out that the blacksmith's tool from 1837 would ignite an agricultural revolution and eventually become as much a part of ranching lore as the cowboy on horseback. John Deere didn't just build tractors and plows, it helped build America's farms and ranches, literally from the ground up. And that story, from horse-drawn to horsepower, continues to this day every time a rancher fires up their green machine at sunrise to go feed the cows.